Welcome back. I'm John, old YouTuber. I have just eat some hot foods. It starts getting dark a little bit and start to get tired. I was watching Netflix a little bit, but it's 3:20. Let's read about Shaped Charger. I just follow my read list there. Had to read about anti-tank warfare. But let's get something to drink before I go to bed and read this. So I'll just eat some hot foods. So I'll start to be tired because I'm not sleeping enough in the night, so I like to get super early to bed today, like 6 p.m. I will go to bed after this one, or maybe read one more. Read this anti-tank warfare, or maybe not. Let's drink everything. Good. I think anti-tank warfare is next. But we look at that. Just read one by one. Then one day I will be finished, maybe, or maybe not. But we cannot read about tanks without read about armor and different kind of weapons. So let's read about this sharpened charges. I don't know what that is.
Shaped charge. Sectioned high explosive anti-tank round with Athena-shaped charge visible sectioned RL-83 blinder side rocket 1. Ballistic cap 2. Air-filled cavity 3. Conical liner 4. Detonator 5. Explosive 6. Piezoelectric trigger. A shaped charge is an explosive charge-shaped toe form an explosively formed penetrator, EFP, to focus effect of the explosive's energy. Different types of shaped charges are used for various purposes such as cutting and forming metal, initiating nuclear weapons, penetrating armor, or perforating wells in the oil and gas industry. A typical modern shaped charge, with a metal liner on the charge cavity, can penetrate armor steel to a depth of 7 or more times the diameter of the charge. Charge diameters, CD, though greater depths of 10 CD and above, 1, 2, have been achieved. Contrary to a misconception, possibly resulting from the acronym for high explosive anti-tank, HEAT, the shaped charge EFP jet does not depend in any way on heating or melting for its effectiveness. That is, the EFP from a shaped charge does not melt its way through armor, as its effect is purely kinetic in nature. 3. However, the process does create significant heat and often has a significant secondary incendiary effect after penetration. Monroe effect. The Monroe or Newman effect is the focusing of blast energy by a hollow or void cut on a surface of an explosive. The earliest mention of hollow charges were mentioned in 1792. Franz Xaver von Baader, 1765-1841, was a German mining engineer at that time. In a mining journal, he advocated a conical space at the forward end of a blasting charge to increase the explosive's effect and thereby save powder. 4. The idea was adopted, for a time, in Norway and in the mines of the Harz Mountains of Germany, although the only available explosive at the time was gunpowder, which is not a high explosive and hence incapable of producing the shock wave that the shaped charge effect requires. 5. The first true hollow charge effect was achieved in 1883 by Max von Foerster, 1845-1905-6, chief of the nitrocellulose factory of Wolf and Company in Walls Road, Germany. 7. 8. By 1886, Gustav Blum of Dusseldorf, Germany, had filed U.S. Patent 342,423 for hemispherical cavity metal detonators to concentrate the effect of the explosion in an axial direction. 9. The Monroe effect is named after Charles E. Monroe, who discovered it in 1888. As a civilian chemist working at the U.S. Naval Torpedo Station at Newport, Rhode Island, he noticed that when a block of explosive guncotton with the manufacturer's name stamped into it was detonated next to a metal plate, the lettering was cut into the plate. Conversely, if letters were raised in relief above the surface of the explosive, then the letters on the plate would also be raised above its surface. 10. In 1894, Monroe constructed his first crude-shaped charge SAD-Smiley 11. 12. Among the experiments made, was one upon a safe 29 inches cube, with walls 4 inches and 3/4 thick, made up of plates of iron and steel. W. Hen a hollow charge of dynamite 9 pounds and a half in weight and untamped was detonated on it. A hole 3 inches in diameter was blown clear through the wall. The hollow cartridge was made by tying the sticks of dynamite around a tin can, the open mouth of the latter being placed downward. 13. Although Monroe's experiment with the shaped charge was widely publicized in 1900 in Popular Science Monthly, the importance of the tin can liner of the hollow charge remained unrecognized for another 44 years. 14. Part of that 1900 article was reprinted in the February 1945 issue of Popular Science. 15. Describing how shaped charge warheads worked. It was this article that at last revealed to the general public how the United States Army bazooka actually worked against armored vehicles during World War II. In 1910, Egon Neumann of Germany discovered that a block of TNT, which would normally dent a steel plate, punched a hole through it if the explosive had a conical indentation. 16. 17. The military usefulness of Monroe's and Neumann's work was unappreciated for a long time. Between the world wars, academics in several countries, Mrnyakov, Levik, Zakharevsky, in the Soviet Union, 18, William H. Payment and Donald Whitley Woodhead in Britain, 19, and Robert Williams Wood in the U.S. 20, recognized that projectiles could form during explosions. However, it was not until 1932 that Franz Rudolf Tomanek, a student of physics at Vienna's Technische Hochschule, conceived an anti-tank round that was based on the hollow charge effect. When the Austrian government showed no interest in pursuing the idea, Tomanek moved to Berlin's Technische Hochschule, where he continued his studies under the ballistics expert Carl Julius Kranz. 21. There in 1935, he and Helmuth von Hutton developed a prototype anti-tank round. Although the weapon's performance proved disappointing, Tomanek continued his developmental work, collaborating with Hubert Skardine at the Waffeninstitut der Luftwaffe, Air Force Weapons Institute, in Braunschweig. 22. By 1937, Skardine believed that hollow charge effects were due to the interactions of shock waves. It was during the testing of this idea that, on the 4th of February 1938, Tomanek conceived the shaped charge explosive, or Hollladungsauskleidungseffekt, hollow charge liner effect. 23. It was Gustav Adolf Thoma who in 1938 first visualized, by flash radiography, The metallic jet produced by a shaped charge explosion. 24. Meanwhile, Henry Hans Mohaupt, a chemical engineer in Switzerland, had independently developed a shaped charge munition in 1935, which was demonstrated to the Swiss, French, British, and U.S. militaries. 25. During World War II, shaped charge munitions were developed by Germany, Panzerschreck, Panzerfaust Pantherwolf Mine, Mistel, Britain, Pit, Beehive Cratering Charge, the Soviet Union, RPG-43, RPG-6, the US, Bazooka, 26, 27, and Italy, IFTO Pronto Special shells for various artillery pieces. 28. The development of shaped charges revolutionized anti-tank warfare. Tanks faced a serious vulnerability from a weapon that could be carried by an infantryman or aircraft. One of the earliest uses of shaped charges was by German glider-borne troops against the Belgian Fort Eben-Emael in 1940. 29. These demolition charges developed by Dr. Wolfgen of the German Ordnance Office were unlined explosive charges. 30, and did not produce a metal jet like the modern H-8 warheads. Due to the lack of metal liner, they shook the turrets but they did not destroy them, and other airborne troops were forced to climb on the turrets and smash the gun barrels. 31. Applications. Modern military. The common term in military terminology for shaped charge warheads is high explosive anti-tank, HEAT, warhead. Heat warheads are frequently used in anti-tank guided missiles, unguided rockets, gun-fired projectiles, both spun, spin-stabilized, and unspun, rifle grenades, landmines, bomblets, torpedoes, and various other weapons. Protection. During World War II, the precision of the charge's construction and its detonation mode were both inferior to modern warheads. This lower precision caused the jet to curve and to break up at an earlier time and hence at a shorter distance. The resulting dispersion decreased the penetration depth for a given cone diameter and also shortened the optimum standoff distance. Since the charges were less effective at larger standoffs, side and turret skirts, known as Skazen, fitted to some German tanks to protect against ordinary anti-tank rifles, 32, were fortuitously found to give the jet room to disperse and hence also reduce H-8 penetration. The use of add-on spaced armor skirts on armored vehicles may have the opposite effect and actually increase the penetration of some shaped charge warheads. Due to constraints in the length of the projectile forward/missile, the built-in standoff on many warheads is less than the optimum distance. In such cases, the skirting effectively increases the distance between the armor and the target, and the warhead detonates closer to its optimum standoff. 33. Skirting should not be confused with cage armor, which is primarily used to damage the fusing system of RPG-7 projectiles, but can also cause a heat projectile to pitch up or down on impact, lengthening the penetration path for the shaped charge's penetration stream. If the nose probe strikes one of the cage armor slats, the warhead will function as normal non-military. In non-military applications, shaped charges are used in explosive demolition of buildings and structures, in particular for cutting through metal piles, columns and beams, 34, 35, 36, and for boring holes. 37. In steelmaking, small shaped charges are often used to pierce taps that have become plugged with slag. 37. They are also used in quarrying, breaking up ice, breaking log jams, felling trees, and drilling post holes. 37. Shaped charges are used most extensively in the petroleum and natural gas industries, in particular in the completion of oil and gas wells, in which they are detonated to perforate the metal casing of the well at intervals to admit the influx of oil and gas. 38. A 4.5 kilograms, 9.9 pound Shaped charge was used on the Hayabusa 2 mission on asteroid 162,173 Ryugu. The spacecraft dropped the explosive device onto the asteroid and detonated it with the spacecraft behind cover. The detonation dug a crater about 10 meters wide, to provide access to a pristine sample of the asteroid. 39. Function. A 40-pound, 18 kilograms, Composition B-formed projectile used by combat engineers. The shaped charge ice used to bore a hole for a cratering charge. A typical device consists of a solid cylinder of explosive with ametal-lined conical hollow in one end and a central detonator, array of detonators, or detonation waveguide at the other end. Explosive energy is released directly away from, normal to, the surface of an explosive, so shaping the explosive will concentrate the explosive energy in the void. If the hollow is properly shaped, usually conically, the enormous pressure generated by the detonation of explosive drives the liner in the hollow cavity inward to collapse upon its central axis. The resulting collision forms and projects a high-velocity jet of metal particles forward along the axis. Most off-jet material originates from the innermost part of the liner, a layer of about 10% to 20% of the thickness. The rest of the liner forms a slower-moving slug of material, which, because of its appearance, is sometimes called a carrot. Because of the variation along the liner in its collapse velocity, the jet's velocity also varies along its length, decreasing from the front. This variation in jet velocity stretches it and eventually leads to its breakup into particles. Over time, the particles tend to fall out of alignment, which reduces the depth of penetration at long standoffs. Also, at the apex of the cone, which forms the very front of the jet, the liner does not have time to be fully accelerated before it forms its part of the jet. This results in its small part of jet being projected at a lower velocity than jet formed later behind it. As a result, the initial parts of the jet coalesce to form a pronounced wider tip portion. Most of the jet travels at hypersonic speed. The tip moves at 7 to 14 km forward/s, the jet tail at a lower velocity, 1 to 3 km forward/s, and the slug at a still lower velocity, less than 1 km forward/s. The exact velocities depend on the charge's configuration and confinement, explosive type, materials used, and the explosive initiation mode. At typical velocities, the penetration process generates such enormous pressures that it may be considered hydrodynamic. To a good approximation, the jet and armor may be treated as inviscid, compressible fluids, see, for example, 40, with their material strengths ignored. A recent technique using magnetic diffusion analysis showed that the temperature of the outer 50% by volume of a copper jet tip while in flight was between 1100 K and 1200 K, 41, much closer to the melting point of copper, 1358 K, than previously assumed. 42. This temperature is consistent with a hydrodynamic calculation that simulated the entire experiment. 43. In comparison, two-color radiometry measurements from the late 1970s indicate lower temperatures for various shaped charge liner material, cone construction and type of explosive filler. 44. A Comp B loaded shaped charge with a copper liner and pointed cone apex at a jet tip temperature ranging from 668 K to 863 K over a 5-shot sampling. Octal-loaded charges with a rounded cone apex generally had higher surface temperatures with an average of 810 K, and the temperature of a tin lead liner with Comp B fill averaged 842 K. While the tin lead jet was determined to be liquid, the copper jets are well below the melting point of copper. However, These temperatures are not completely consistent with evidence that soft recovered copper jet particles show signs of melting at the core while the outer portion remains solid and cannot be equated with bulk temperature. 45. The location of the charge relative to its target is critical for